My brother made my life hell and got my wife pregnant. Now he wants my help after our parents disowned him and left me. Their $2 million inheritance. Growing up with Kyle was like living with a hurricane that only destroyed my stuff. He was 3 years older and used that age gap to make me miserable every single day. Broke my toys, told my girlfriends I wet the bed until I was 12, even convinced my parents I was the one who crashed dad's truck when he was actually driving. The worst part? My parents always believed him. Kyle was the golden child, the football star, the kid who could do no wrong. I was just the quiet younger brother who got decent grades and stayed out of trouble. When I met Sarah in college, she was the first person who actually saw me for who I was. We dated for 4 years before I proposed. Kyle showed up to our wedding drunk and hit on 3 bridesmaids during his best man speech. My parents laughed it off, saying boys will be boys. Sarah and I bought a small house about 20 minutes from my parents. We were trying for a baby, had been for almost 2 years with no luck. The doctor said everything looked fine, we just needed to keep trying and stay patient. Kyle was still living at home at 32, bouncing between jobs and borrowing money from our parents every month. Last Thanksgiving, Sarah told me she felt sick and left dinner early. I stayed to help clean up, and Kyle offered to drive her home since he hadn't been drinking yet. I thought it was actually nice of him for once. 2 weeks later, Sarah sat me down in our kitchen with tears streaming down her face. She was pregnant. I was so happy for about 5 seconds until I saw her expression. She told me everything through sobs that made her whole body shake. Kyle had assaulted her that night when he drove her home. She was dizzy and nauseous, and he helped her inside, then attacked her while she was vulnerable. She didn't tell me right away because she was scared and ashamed and didn't know how to say the words out loud. But now she was pregnant, and the timeline matched up perfectly with that night. I've never felt rage like that in my entire life. I drove straight to my parents' house and dragged Kyle out to the front yard by his shirt, told him exactly what he did and that Sarah was pregnant with his child. My dad pulled me off him before I could do any real damage. I expected my parents to defend Kyle like always, make excuses, blame Sarah, tell me I was overreacting, but my mom just stood there staring at Kyle with this look of absolute horror. My dad asked Kyle if it was true. Kyle tried to lie at first, said Sarah was making it up, that she probably cheated on me and was blaming him. That's when my mom slapped him across the face so hard it echoed down the street. She told him to get out of her house and never come back. My dad said if Kyle ever contacted me, Sarah, or them again, he'd make sure Kyle went to prison. They meant it too. Changed their locks that night, blocked his number, refused to give him any money. Kyle moved 4 states away to live with our cousin who didn't know the full story. 2 months ago, my parents passed away in a car accident on Route 9. Heart attack behind the wheel, died instantly. Their will left everything to me. The house, their savings, dad's life insurance, all of it added up to just over $2 million. Sarah and I were still processing the grief and the money and everything when Kyle showed up at my door last week. He looked terrible, skinny and tired and desperate. Started this whole speech about how he'd changed, how he was sorry, how he'd been in therapy and realized what a monster he'd been. Then he got to the real reason he was there. He was broke, living in his car, couldn't find work because of his record. He'd heard about the inheritance and thought maybe I could spare some money since we were still family. He actually said those words, "We're still family." I stood in my doorway looking at this man who tortured me my whole childhood and assaulted my wife. Sarah was 8 months pregnant inside our house, carrying his child that we decided to raise as our own. Kyle had the nerve to ask if he could be part of the baby's life once it was born. Said every kid deserves to know their real father. I told him our parents disowned him for a reason, that the $2 million they left me was their final statement about which son deserved their legacy. Then I pulled out the restraining order Sarah and I had filed that morning and had him served right there on my porch. He started yelling about how I was just like our parents, how I always got everything handed to me, how it wasn't fair. The police showed up 3 minutes later because I'd already called them. Kyle left in handcuffs for violating the restraining order's distance requirement. Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby girl 2 weeks ago. We named her after my mom. Kyle sends letters sometimes to a P.O. box my lawyer set up. I throw them away without reading them. The $2 million is going into a trust fund for our daughter and donations to organizations that help assault survivors.